All right, guys, we are going to be reacting to Ukraine's Leopard 2 strategy. Has Germany stunned? Pure genius. Let's jump in.
Designed to race across the North German plain, rip apart Soviet armor at distance, and keep moving before the other side understood what hit it. The whole doctrine was aggression. Find them, fix them, kill them, drive on. It was not built to lurk in a barn for 6 hours waiting for a drone feed. It was not built to hide in a Ukrainian tree line and pick off targets at 4,000 meters before vanishing before the revenge drones arrived. And yet, that is exactly what Ukraine has turned it into. By the end of this video, you'll understand why that transformation is not just tactically clever. It may be one of the clearest demonstrations yet of how armored warfare is being fundamentally rewritten, and why every army in Europe is paying very close attention to what happens when NATO's most widely deployed tank meets a battlefield that its designers never imagined. Before we get to the battlefield, you need to understand what makes the Leopard 2 genuinely special, because the tactic only makes sense once you know the tool. The Leopard 2 has been in service since 1979, but the variants Ukraine received are far from the original. Germany delivered 18 Leopard 2 A6s, which entered service with Ukraine's 1st Tank Brigade in May 2023. The A6 is defined by one thing above everything else: its Rheinmetall 120mm L55 smoothbore gun. That L55 designation matters. The previous standard NATO tank gun, the L44, still used on the Leopard 2 A4, has a barrel 44 calibers long. The L55 is 55 calibers, 1 meter longer. That extra length means higher muzzle velocity, better ballistic performance, and an effective engagement range that reaches out to 4,000 meters under operational conditions, with some sources citing accuracy out to 6,000 meters in optimal circumstances. For context, a kilometer is about the length of 10 football fields. The Leopard 2 A6 can reliably kill a tank from 40 football fields away. The armor protecting the crew who fire that gun is equally serious. The Leopard 2 A6's turret front provides an estimated 920 to 940 millimeters of rolled, homogeneous armor equivalent protection against kinetic penetrators, roughly twice the armor thickness you'd find on the front of a Soviet-era T-72. The hull glacis offers around 620 millimeters equivalent. Against shape charge warheads, the protection figures are even higher. The hull is fitted with spall liners to reduce fragmentation if armor is penetrated, and the ammunition compartment is designed so that a hit to the ammunition storage vents the explosion outward rather than into the crew. The same principle, incidentally, that has saved Leopard 2 crews from what would have been fatal hits in Soviet-era tanks. Sweden's contribution adds another layer. Stockholm sent Ukraine 10 of its Stridsvagn 122s, a Swedish-developed variant of the Leopard 2A5 that beat out both the American M1A2 Abrams and the French Leclerc in trials in 1994. The STRV-122 features enhanced armor on the crew hatches and hull roof, improved fire control for accuracy on the move, and French Galax smoke dispensers. Sweden put in its best, and Ukraine put all of it to work in ways nobody expected. In total, across Germany, Canada, Poland, Spain, Norway, the Netherlands, Denmark, Portugal, Finland, and Sweden, Ukraine received roughly 250 Leopard family tanks, making the Leopard the numerically largest family of Western tanks in Ukrainian service by a significant margin. Here is the part that Germany does not love talking about, because before the genius came the catastrophe. When Ukraine launched its 2023 summer counteroffensive, it threw its newly received Leopards, Abrams, and Challengers into a full-scale armored push. The result was brutal. Dense Russian minefields, layered defensive lines with anti-tank ditches, Dragon's Teeth concrete obstacles, artillery pre-registered on every approach route, FPV drones watching everything, attack helicopters waiting in depth. The first Leopard 2 A6 lost in the war went down near Novopokrovka in Zaporizhia that summer. The headlines were savage. Burned out Leopards on minefields made for damaging imagery. But buried in the disaster was a lesson that Ukraine absorbed faster than most armies would have. The tank was not the problem. The problem was the doctrine. Ukraine had tried to use Leopards the way NATO planned to use them against a conventional Soviet advance. fast, aggressive, spearheading. On a battlefield saturated with cheap drones, covered in mines, and pre-zeroed by Russian artillery, that doctrine was a death sentence. The open field had become a kill zone for anything that moved. So Ukraine did something that deserves more credit than it gets. It stopped, looked at what the battlefield was actually demanding, and completely reinvented how it used the tank it had. Here is what the Leopard 2 does now in Ukraine, and it is nothing like what it was designed to do. The tank hides in a barn, in a tree line, in a prepared hold-down position on a reverse slope, where only the turret is exposed. The crew watches drone feeds, reconnaissance UAVs that have already mapped the Russian approach routes, identified vehicle types, and tracked the column's movement for hours before a shot is fired. Infantry screen the close terrain, clearing the tree lines and ruined buildings where anti-tank teams could lurk within 500 meters. Counter UAV systems watch for Russian reconnaissance drones that might expose the tank's position. The whole team works together, and the Leopard waits. Then a Russian column commits to the road. Maybe it is moving under overcast skies, thinking weather gives it cover. The lead vehicles have those grotesque anti-drone cage structures welded on top. The battlefield improvisation that looks absurd right until it saves a crew from an FPV.
That's crazy.
Ukrainian recon drones are already above them. Maybe the first event is a mine. Maybe it is an FPV striking the lead vehicle. Suddenly the column compresses. Drivers brake. One vehicle slews sideways, engines reverse, turrets start swinging, and that is when the Leopard crew gets its window. Not to duel honorably at close range like it is 1985, to deliver 2 or 3 precise shots at 3,000 meters into a traffic jam
That's
from
crazy.
a concealed position before relocating, before the sky fills with retaliation drones. The Center for European Policy Analysis describes it exactly. The era of the cautious tank, where both sides remain concealed in tree lines, only briefly emerging to fire at distant targets. The 33rd Separate Mechanized Brigade, Ukraine's premier Leopard 2 unit, has executed this doctrine in documented engagements twice in recent months.
That's actually very impressive. That's very impressive.
Near Pokrovsk in January 2025, a single Leopard 2 A4 crew neutralized a Russian armored column of 5 vehicles using cover from village structures, maneuvering and firing with precision until the entire column was destroyed. While maneuvering, the tank crew fired with precision, striking at least 5 enemy armored vehicles. Some were hit multiple times, resulting in the destruction of the entire column, including the personnel it was transporting, according to Ukraine's Hortitsia Operational Command. 1 month earlier, at Dalnya, south of Kurakhove, in November 2024, Leopard 2 A4s of the same brigade blocked a major Russian assault. Precise cannon fire disabled 2 Russian tanks, 1 armored personnel carrier, and additional armored fighting vehicles. And Ukrainian drones then pursued the retreating Russian infantry. Effective work just blows the heads off the enemies, the 33rd Brigade wrote. The intelligence analyst Moklassen described what it meant to go up against a Leopard 2 in one of these engagements when your tank has been turtled with anti-drone armor. Limited visibility and engagement options once you've turtled your tank, and suddenly you find yourself in an engagement with a Leo 2. Russian crews were fighting half-blind. Ukrainian crews were fighting with full thermal optics, a computerized fire control system, and a 4,000-meter gun. It was not a fair fight. This is the part that connects the hardware to the tactic, and it is where the Leopard 2 A6 specifically earns its place. On a battlefield where exposure time is measured in seconds, standoff range is everything. A tank that can reliably engage at 4,000 meters can fire from positions that Russian FPV drones, with their typical range of around 2 kilometers, simply cannot reach. The longer the barrel, the farther the engagement. The farther the engagement, the less time the crew spends in danger. That is not a coincidence. That is exactly why Ukraine's commanders gravitate toward the A6 for this ambush role when they have the choice. The EMES-15 fire control system includes thermal imaging that works day and night, a laser rangefinder, and a ballistic computer that accounts for wind, temperature, and barrel wear to calculate the exact firing solution. In the 2A6, This is integrated with the longer L/55 gun that fires the DM-53 APFSDS round, a tungsten penetrator kinetic dart moving at over 1,700 meters per second. Against Russian T-72 variants and even the more modern T-90, that is a reliable kill at ranges where the target cannot effectively return fire. One Ukrainian Leopard loader captured what this feels like.
Jesus Christ, I don't know about you guys, but feeling that some of those guys are not gonna come back. Oof, man, it's hard to watch. Let's put it that way. Oh my God.
From the inside, the fire control computer stores targeting data for multiple vehicles simultaneously. When the commander decides which to engage, the gunner switches targets with a single button press. In the middle of a column ambush, with vehicles moving and spreading, that capability is the difference between killing 2 vehicles and killing 5. Now for the honest part, because this is a war, not a sales brochure. As of Oryx's April 2025 tracking, Ukraine had lost 38 Leopard 2s out of roughly 250 Leopard family tanks supplied, around a fifth of the fleet. Some of those losses came during the 2023 counteroffensive, when doctrine and circumstances conspired against the tanks before Ukraine had worked out the new approach. Others have come since, because no doctrine eliminates risk entirely. Russian drone swarms, artillery, and anti-tank missiles remain lethal. A Leopard caught exposed for too long dies just like anything else.
Damn, man.
The maintenance situation is more complicated than the loss numbers suggest. The Leopard 2 is a sophisticated machine. Its fire control system, its 1,500 horsepower MTU-MB 873 V12 diesel, its composite armor modules, all require specialist technicians and specialist tools. In the early months, major repairs had to be done in Poland.
I was going to ask you, at this point, don't you think that it's easier if you can just move one of those factories to Ukraine and just build them right there? I mean, at this point, I don't see this war just ending in the next couple of years, guys. Might as well just start building something similar over there.
At the Bumar Labendi facility in Gliwice, or sent all the way to Lithuania or Germany. That meant damaged tanks sat out of action for weeks or months, waiting for transport and repair queues. Canada contributed an additional 20 million Canadian dollars to the Leopard 2 Maintenance and Repair Center in Poland as recently as July 2025.
Wow.
A reminder that keeping these tanks fighting is almost as expensive as buying them. Spare parts for the older A4 variants are becoming scarce, since active production lines for certain components no longer exist. The same problem the Challenger 2 faces with its rifled barrel. Crews are working around shortages through improvisation, cannibalizing damaged tanks for parts, and building in-country repair capability that did not exist 2 years ago. But here is what the maintenance story actually shows.
That's crazy.
A damaged Leopard 2 is not automatically a lost Leopard 2. The same Forbes report that tracked losses in the summer 2023 counteroffensive noted that, crucially, every crew member of the destroyed tanks escaped, 20 soldiers in 5 destroyed tanks. The separated ammunition storage vented the explosions outward instead of into the crew, and damaged tanks cycle back through Poland or Lithuania and return to the front line. One Ukrainian soldier, Oleksandr Solonko, put it directly.
They can still use them.
Western tanks are saving lives, and even most critically damaged military equipment is recovered and taken for repairs. The tank can be repaired. The crew cannot be replaced so easily. A lot of early commentary on the Leopard 2 in Ukraine focused on the wrong question. It asked, is this tank good enough? The answer was always yes. The tank was fine. The problem was everything around it. The doctrine, the numbers, the training time, the maintenance infrastructure, the tactical context. The more important question is, what does it take to make a Leopard 2 lethal on a drone-saturated, mine-covered, surveillance-saturated battlefield? Ukraine's answer is a system. Reconnaissance drones that find the target before the tank moves. Counter UAV screens that keep Russian eyes away from the firing position. Infantry that clear the close terrain where short-range threats lurk. Artillery and FPVs that shape the approach before the tank takes its shots, and a repair chain that brings damaged vehicles back into service fast enough to matter. The tank is not a lone predator anymore. It is the apex predator in a coordinated hunting system, and the system is what makes the difference between a column destroyer and an expensive bonfire. CEPA analyst David Kirichenko described the new reality precisely. Enemy and friendly drones crisscross the airspace, hunting for valuable targets like heavy armor and artillery. In that world, a Leopard used carelessly is bait. A Leopard used carefully is a mobile execution platform. Every army in NATO is watching, because the lessons Ukraine is writing in smoke, wreckage, and drone footage are not abstract doctrinal theory. They are the actual future of armored warfare. And the side that learns them fastest, builds the kill chains deepest, and repairs its machines quickest will be the side that still has tanks when the fighting slows down. The Leopard 2 is still dangerous, but in Ukraine, it is dangerous for a new reason. It is no longer charging into the future. It is lurking there, engine off, hull hidden, turret waiting, while a drone overhead decides who dies next.
More like a hunter, basically.
Subscribe to stay with this
like
story,
a leopard.
because the lesson...
Like a leopard. Like a leopard, like a hunter. Yeah, I mean, yeah. At least they're not wasting all that money. At least they can just recover some of those pieces, bring them back. And sometimes if the tank is completely destroyed, at least they can use some of the pieces. But I didn't know that some of these pieces they're not even making them anymore. That is actually quite sad, because they make the repairment process longer. Wow. There you have it, guys. I mean, let me know what you guys see in the comment section below. I would love to hear your guys' opinion regarding this. I personally believe might as well just have like a factory over there and just start building from scratch. At least have them in Hungary or something like that, where they can start, building some of this stuff. If it happens that Russia, I don't know, or Belarusian attack Ukraine and they start taking some of those lands, you can destroy the factory, just get all that stuff back to Germany. Let me know what you guys think, guys. I will see you next one.